Thank you all for coming out. Like I was just saying, this is definitely an irrigated crop this year. Yeah, it looks very good. Sugar beets like warm, dry weather, and we've had that in abundance so far, and I don't see any end in sight for a while. So yeah, the sugar beets are doing well, provided we can, get enough water on them. And I think so far we have, and hopefully we can get a little bit of a reprieve from the heat so we can save some water. But anyway, I guess what I'm here to talk about today is the no-till experiment we did on this field. So I guess the first thing I'd like to say is we're not innovators doing this. There's been many friends and neighbors that have did this pretty successfully with beets in the last 10 or so years. So we knew going in that when we wanted to try this that someone had did it before successfully. So that kind of reduced the risk and made the decision that much easier. So in 2022 we had barley on this farm the whole quarter. We combined it and then baled off the straw. We had pretty significant chaff rows after we baled, so we ran a heavy harrow pass to break up some of that chaff and straw that remained. And yeah, thinking we were going to be doing probably 2 more tillage passes here, we figured that that was going to be enough to do that heavy harrow pass. What we didn't know is winter rolled in fairly early for us after we got our sugar beets done in late October, or I think it was actually, yeah, late October, finally before Halloween we finished that. So anyway, winter blew in. We did not get our fertilizer applied in the fall here like we normally like to. And that was true of all of our fields, our 2023 beet fields. So yeah, going into the spring, it was a bit of a, I'm not going to say stress, but we knew we had to get the fertilizer down before planting. We typically like to have it in the ground in the fall before, but it just didn't work that way. So one thing we noticed looking at our soil test results, this half of the field had lots of fertility. It had a history of having more manure on this half. It was kind of a situation where the feedlot ran out of manure actually, and we only had this half fertilized with manure at that time a couple years back. So there was in excess of 500 pounds available in the soil. To grow sugar beets, you need 200 to 220. So we had a lot of nitrogen available. So we knew we didn't have to put anything down. So that was another factor that made this a good candidate for no-till. So when we started thinking about that, yeah, it made the decision easier. And with how dry everything else was, we thought it would be good to, simply put seed in directly into untilled soil. So we did that, got started with the drill. Things looked pretty good. So just kind of went ahead with it and seeded the entire half of the circle. Yeah, definitely could see the chaff rows still. It did look a little sketchy, certainly. And, beets actually came up pretty rapidly this year. We had the good warm weather. We got the water on them right away with the pivot. So right away they started germinating and emerging. I say right away, I mean, it's probably within a week, which is pretty quick for beets. Right away we started noticing the swath effect from last year's combining. The stand was thinner in those swaths. The beets were a little bit slower to push through that straw as well. But what we noticed between the straw rows was that the stand was actually superior to any of our other fields where we did tillage, including the other side, which was kind of a direct, which would be the side-by-side comparison. So if you'd driven by this field in May, you definitely would have seen the chaff row effect. I think if you flew a drone or something, you could probably still see it. I don't see it anymore driving past. But definitely in those chaff rows, the beets were slower. They took longer to close up the rows, definitely. But once they did, yeah, things look pretty uniform and green here. So yeah, my observations are that, between the straw rows, excellent stand, possibly a better crop than anywhere else. However, when we factor in the, the straw row effect, that's going to bring the yield down. As far as the side-by-side, I talked about the fertility difference. It was so high on this side, and we actually applied fertilizer on the other half. So it's really hard to say, doing this side-by-side with beets, you really want to manage your end fertility. If you have too much, that's going to hurt your quality. I mean, if you have too much, that's going to give you big tons, but your quality will suffer. So it's kind of hard to figure out, or hard for me to make a prediction as to what's going to be the better yielding side. But so far it looks good, and all beets in Alberta really look good this year. So
what kind of drill is it you use?
So it is a 7300 John Deere vacuum planter. So that would be the same as, I think, a 1730 is the more up-to-date version.
So is it the same row spacing as what the barley stubble would have been? Or
No.
Okay.
No, we didn't worry about going between the rows or anything. Our barley last year was seeded on 7s. We just went right over top of it. But it didn't really, we didn't really notice a whole bunch of issues when we were right on top of the barley stubble.
But that also, because you also cleared off all the straws, so that would have helped.
Yeah, certainly, yeah.
So did you have any areas where you had some lodging and you had some barley straw, and was there any hairpinning happening on those spots? Or?
Yeah, there was some, and once again, kind of reduced stand in places, but certainly not as bad as I thought it was going to be right after the drill went through. I was a little skeptical as to what it was going to look like, but it did a lot better than I thought.
Did you have row cleaners?
We did, yeah.
Did you? Okay.
And I don't think
a double yetter, or
correct, yeah. And I don't think it would work at all without them. Yeah.
and how deep did you put this as compared to your conventionally tilled?
You know, my brother runs the planter. I believe he went a little bit deeper with the yetters, but not significantly. Yeah, that would be a better question for him.
How deep do you seed?
Generally about 1 inch to 1.25 inches deep, and that's typical for beets. We want to be shallow.
I'm just learning on beets here, but do you still have to go down 48 inches on the soil test?
We do, yeah.
The advantages being?
We don't generally notice a whole lot in the 3rd and 4th foot.
Okay.
I think we could probably abandon doing it, but I've always did it, and we want to see if we do have some nitrogen down deep. If we do, that can cause, issues with quality and stuff. So yeah, we have to be careful. But yeah, I kind of wonder if that's even worth it anymore. But that's just me.
Where would you be more comfortable if you changed?
Oh, I think 3 would be deep enough.
Okay.
Yeah. That's just my personal feeling.
What are your thoughts on strip tillage?
Well, and yeah, over the, since planting this, that is something I've kind of thought a little bit more about, because getting the fertilizer pre-plant is always the big question mark, and we would do a lot more of this if that wasn't such a thing. So yeah, a strip till machine may be in our future, and for some reason that's been kind of a slow. There hasn't been as much uptake in Alberta as we thought, maybe 15 or 20 years ago, but maybe that's something that everyone needs to start thinking about with the drier springs we've had lately anyway. It's certainly more front of mind.
I've learned a lot. Sorry, buddy. You've learned a lot, so let's hear your wisdom. I've also learned a lot about sugar beets this year for the first time. Was surprised to hear that there's never been really any banding of fertilizers for sugar beets. So
not a whole bunch.
It's mostly broadcast. So I'm wondering, with the strip till and having the opportunity to also ban, and a little bit deeper, so it's in the moisture too for your immobiles. Because we had one of the speakers from Idaho talking about sugar beets and the importance of the phosphorus at depth for sugar beets.
Sure. Okay.
So that would be a year before, wouldn't it? You would do that?
In the fall, probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how did you just broadcast your nitrogen on here?
We didn't actually put any nitrogen on here.
Soil test.
Yeah, just soil tested. We knew we had
So if
500
you,
plus.
If you had to put nitrogen on here, how would you have done it then?
It would have been through our air seeder. So we have a broadcast kit on the front of the air seeder. It's got 12-inch spacing. Just kind of run it like a chisel plow, is about as deep as it'll go. And it'll put on 380-ish pounds pretty nicely with that broadcast kit.
How did you tend to your phosphate program?
So yeah, that was another thing I forgot to mention. We do put some liquid down in furrow. I think it's 3 gallons per acre. I don't remember what that equates to in pounds per acre, but we do in furrow, and we did that here. So that is something I should have mentioned.
1034 or an Alpine or an Amex?
At 1034, yeah.
So 3 gallons, probably 7-8 pounds, something like that, maybe?
Yeah.
it's good. Liquid kits on the planters are always good costly down there.
Yeah. And we had top dressed some through the pivot, and we were kind of debating whether we should top dress through this side where the fertility was high, because just with the chaff rows it was a bit yellow and things, but my brother and I talked about it, and I just had a hard time dumping extra fertilizer on top of 500 pounds, so we didn't do that.
And your phos level should be pretty high if it was manured, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Have you taken any tissue tests?
We have not, no.
So will you do it again?
I think, yeah, if the opportunity presents itself, like, we certainly would. It worked out fine. Probably worthwhile, even, like I said, with the swath effect being, you know, a little weaker. I think overall we'd still do it.
So is there any way you could spread that swath out a bit more?
Well, and that's probably the first step, is do a better job of spreading out that chaff and straw. And the fact that it was barley grinds up more coming out of the combine, so it is hard to recover as much of that straw with the baler. You end up just leaving a lot of chaff, whereas with wheat you pick up a lot more of it, so yeah.
What about stripper heading, Gary, and swapping the straw after and baling the straw after you strip it, after you strip the barley? Because you're not dealing with chaff, you know, you're not dealing with the straw, you're shooting grinding up the
Right,
straw.
right.
So we've done some of that in really heavy crops. And your balers love it because there's nice long pieces of straw and you get every piece. You're not trying to deal with stuff that's wound up.
Yeah, that could be a solution too, but I think, like Ken said, that probably is time to look at a strip till if we're going to, you know, tempt that system. But yeah, that could have potential too.
If you're a strip till, you'd hardly have to build a strip to keep it between it, because then you have all sorts of protection for your right?
So, did you have any wind erosion problems on any of your other fields this year?
No,
You didn't have wind, right?
that's right. Yeah, as soon as you do the experiment, you don't get any wind. Yeah, so, and you know, coming out of 2022, that was, everyone was thinking about that, but I knew looking at the soil it wasn't going to be as big of a deal, but certainly we wanted to protect the ground as well as we could, and this was it was a good thing, definitely.
So, did you have any volunteer barley growing in the spring?
Yeah, we did
And
have
did you
some.
do any herbicide or?
Yeah, it knocked off pretty easily with the Roundup applications.
And that was pre-seed or?
Nope, everything was post. I was a little concerned the weeds were going to get a jump on us with not having did any tillage, but I went probably a few days quicker than I normally would, spraying the first Roundup application, and it's been good. They seem pretty clean, and you can't see anything really out of the canopy here. So that one, yeah.
The one red off type there is that it's almost looks like
That is,
sticking out right there.
I knew somebody would notice that. So that's actually a bolter. A bolter. So in any population of sugar beet seeds, sometimes you're going to have bolters. So sugar beets are a biennial crop. It's a 2-year life cycle. The first year we grow the root. The second we get seed. For some reason, occasionally you get these off types that will bolt. I see one there. There has been years where we've had, you know, blanketed the fields, and the seed companies have actually given rebates the following year because it looks so bad and everything. Those beets don't produce much sugar, and if you have a lot of them, it's going to be an issue. But yeah, a couple isn't really a big deal. So
Did you see any difference on flea beetles in the different options?
no difference side to side. Flea beetles, we haven't seen a lot of pressure probably for 15 years on sugar beets. I don't know why.
Because of the pesticide on the seed?
That's it. Well, that's not on the label, but the thinking is that's what's happening. We're getting that benefit, so
For the canola next door.
perhaps.
Gary, do you mind explaining what your crop rotation is and how much tillage you use in other aspects of your cropping system?
Sure. So our typical rotation is to go wheat, corn silage, wheat again, and then sugar beets. So with growing wheat using conventional tillage methods, we will have made a disc or likely chisel plow pass the previous fall, and then we'll make a pass with our air seeder, putting fertilizer down in the spring, with packers on, and then we'll seed directly into that. So with our cereals, typically 2 pass, and then 2 passes of tillage, and then planting into that. And that's pretty similar with the corn. Occasionally with corn, we might give an extra disc pass or even a harrow packer pass to, break that straw a bit more. Corn likes warmer soil, and but yeah, that's kind of the gist of it. We still do a fair bit of tillage, definitely, but less than we used to.
So within your other crops then, why did you choose to try to direct seed sugar beets, your most valuable crop?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess, well, a big part of it was having the equipment to do it. We knew the drill could do it with the row cleaners. For seeding cereals, we just run a box drill on 7-inch spacing. I don't know how it would get through on a no-till situation. Maybe that's the next experiment we have to try. But
And how do you put your manure? Do you manure every 4 years as well?
yeah, pretty much. Just spread raw manure. We have a neighbor about a mile away that still provides it. We used to have beef cattle and had our own manure for years and years. So there's a long history. But yeah, more recently we get it from the neighbor if we can.
And how do you work that in?
Typically disc, but sometimes we'll chisel plow it in.
Do you grow corn for feed on that?
Yeah.
So nice.
Yeah, we get some fertility back, and yeah, we're definitely firm believers in using manure. It's something that, when we quit feeding cattle, that was the one thing that I thought we were really going to miss, but we've been able to, get some from neighbors and whatnot. We're not putting on as much as we used to, but I think it's enough to kind of maintain that rotation. Any other questions?
I'm just thinking, so in the fall, what do you typically do after sugar beets? And what are you planning on this year with this? Like, are you gonna just leave it and hope it doesn't blow, or kill it or anything?
Good question. So after we harvest beets, we make a chisel pass, wanting to bring up as much lumps as we can without making too much of a mess. And then we want to bring up leaves as well to sit on the surface and protect the surface. From what I'm told, a no-till beet field isn't going to look a whole lot different than a conventional field after we harvest. So I think we're probably just going to treat it exactly the same.
Yeah, I was looking in there. Like, there's still a fair amount of straw
Okay.
in there, but I can see after the harvest and throwing everything around, it's probably it's not gonna look much different. But.
And the beet harvest will put a lot of loose soil on the top as well. So that's not a good thing either. But yeah, I expect we'll likely do the same.
Do you anticipate any challenges harvesting with the little bit extra straw and stuff? I don't know enough about it.
No, I don't. I've never heard anyone complain about it. The modern beet harvesters do a pretty good job of cleaning any straw out with the grab roll systems they have. Back in like 40, 50 years ago, I think it may have been a problem. But yeah, now I think it'll be fine.
And your normal crop after sugar beets is a cereal?
Spring wheat, yeah.
And how much nitrogen do you normally have left in the field after? Like the leaves leave a lot, don't they?
They do. It's estimated they can leave up to 50 pounds per acre on a green leaf crop at harvest. That means likely that you're not going to have a real high quality beet crop. We want it to yellow down or yellow off quite a bit before harvest. That means that the plant is putting sugar into the root for storage over the winter. Yeah, and we're starting to kind of see that in places here. Yeah, so I would suspect we'd likely have 50 plus in the soil. Ideally, we want the soil to be absolutely exhausted after beets, and that's when we have our best quality yielding, but it's always hard to hit that moving target too. So yeah, if you guys want to walk around or have a look in the crop, see what you can see.
How are the beets doing this year compared to other years?
Yeah, it's very good. Things look great. It could be a bumper crop. I mean, I don't like to count chickens, but if we don't get hail, it'll be decent.
Thanks, Gary.
Yeah, thank you so much, Gary.
You're welcome.
We meant to bring you a little gift, but we forgot it. So now you have to stop by our office.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
We'd like to see you. And